Welcome back to yet another episode of how to build an RTS in Unity. In the last episode, we worked on refining the movement of the units and made sure that they stopped correctly when arriving at their destination. In today's episode, we'll be bringing in another unit and showing you how you can make them move a little differently and adding splash damage for their attacks. Before we get started, I normally wait until the end of the episode to mention my RTS, so today I thought I'd mention it early on. As you know, I'm building a deterministic multiplayer RTS called Fungal Front. It would be great if you could take a look at the link in the description and give it a wishlist if it looks like something you would enjoy playing. Okay, let's begin. I think the best place to start would probably be to find a model for the unit we want to use. Since we already know how to use Unity's asset store, I figured I'd show you how to bring in a model from somewhere else. In this case, we'll use Sketchfab. So let's head over to sketchfab.com. It's always a good idea to support artists by purchasing any of the models on this site, but in my case, I'm only going to be looking at free ones for now. So we can drop down the licenses list and make sure that you only select the top 3 options. This means that it will only show you models which you can use for free, and all you have to do is credit them when you release your game. Now, let's search for our model. We'll click back in the search bar. This can really be anything you like, but for this example, I'm going to use a tank. So let's type in tank. And let's look for a model that we like. In my case, I'm going to choose the T4B heavy tank. The most important thing to check here is the triangle count. In this case, this model is only 21,500 triangles, which isn't bad. Of course, the less polygons, the more units you'll be able to add into the game, but this model will be perfect for our requirements. So let's click on download. And let's also make sure that you click on copy credits so you have the credit information on your clipboard, and then click on download on the FBX option. I would recommend that you go and paste the credits into Notepad and save the text file in your project folder so it's easy to maintain. For now, let's go and open up the zip file that we just downloaded. You'll notice that the standard folder structure for the assets from Sketchfab have 2 directories, one for the model and one for the textures. In this case, it's slightly different because they've zipped all of the assets into one folder. So let's open up the source folder, and then we can open up the zip file inside. We can take all of the contents except the Maya swatches folder, and right click on these and go to copy. Then let's head back to Unity, open our project tab, then let's right click on the units folder and click on show in Explorer. Over here we can go into the units folder, right click, and let's create a new folder called heavy tank. Then we can right click and let's paste. Now let's go back to Unity, click on fix now, and if all went well, we should be able to drag this model into our scene. So let's open up the heavy tank, open the scene view, and let's try to drag the model in, drop it there, and we'll press R to scale it up. And it looks good. We can press W and then raise it. And I think the scale looks okay, maybe a bit too big. We can even make it look a little different. And I think that's okay for now. Okay, with that done, let's select the game object, hit F2, and let's call this heavy tank. Okay, now we're going to create a prefab for the tank. To speed things up, let's go and fetch the SWAT guy prefab and use that as a base. So let's go to the project tab, then go to our SWAT guy, use the base SWAT guy prefab. We can right click, prefab, unpack completely, and let's drag the heavy tank into the SWAT guy object, go to the inspector, click over here and reset position. Then we can go and remove the SWAT guy model. So over here we can take this and delete the rig as well. Now let's rename this game object to heavy tank, and let's start making some changes here. So to start, let's adjust the moving range collider. So we'll select moving range, and we can just drag on the radius to get it to the size we want. Probably a little bigger. We can adjust the position. All right, then next we'll want to adjust the attacking range collider. So currently the attacking range shows that we can attack within this radius. Probably want to make that a bit bigger. So let's make it something like that for now. Maybe even a little bigger. Then we can reposition the health bar. So we can select on the canvas, health bar, hit F. Let's get a side view or front view. Press W and we can move this up. Now let's adjust the selection and hover indicators. So we can take both of these and press R, scale this up. You might want to use a bigger sprite here since it's going to get a little pixelated, but I'll attach one of those in the description as well. Okay, now we can set our animator to none. So select the prefab, go on the animator over here and go to none. We can remove this animator, and we're also going to want to add a new shooting effect. So let's go back into our project tab. Then we can go to the JMO assets folder, go to War FX, let's go to fire, and let's choose the flamethrower. We can simply drag that into the hierarchy here, press W, and let's position it where we want it. Somewhere there. Go to the side view. We can bring it up, a bit forward. That looks okay. Now we'll want to adjust these values as we go. So let's go to the inspector. And let's start by setting the simulation speed to something like 6. We can restart that. Looks kind of okay. Let's try something like 4 and reduce this to something like 1.5. And I think that looks okay for now. Then we can select this and duplicate it for the other barrel. Now let's go back to the heavy tank prefab and let's adjust some of these values. So to start, we'll probably want to adjust the max health to be something like, let's say 400. The damage per shot would definitely be more, so let's go with 100. And let's say the attack cooldown time can be 2.5. You'll see we're missing a shooting effect, so we can just assign one of these for now. And let's adjust the speed of the navmesh agent. So we can go to speed over here and let's go with something like 20. He's definitely going to turn slower, but let's go with something like 240 for now. And let's reduce the acceleration down to something like 10. We're also going to want to adjust his radius. So we can drag the radius over here till it matches roughly the size of the model. And we'll need a few more fields which aren't yet here, but we'll add those to the unit script shortly. So let's go to our project tab. So let's scroll up and let's double click on the unit script. Okay, we'll need a few more fields which aren't here yet. The first one will be a Boolean. So let's scroll to the top here and near the attacking range field, let's add another one here, which is a serialized field. We can go private and we can make it a Boolean. And let's make this does splash damage. And we'll default this to false. The second one we'll want to add is the splash damage radius. So let's go serialized field again, private float, splash damage radius, and let's set that to 5 for now. Next, we'll want to be able to specify the type of unit. So let's head over to the enums folder and we can right click here, add new item, and let's call this unit type. We can hit add. And we're going to change this to an enum. And let's make it public. And the first type we'll have is the SWAT guy. And the second would be the heavy tank. We can hit save, go back to our unit script, and let's make the first field the unit type. And let's call this unit type. And you'll see we can't access this because it's in a different namespace right now. So we can just import using assets.scripts.enums. Okay, the next one we'll want to add is the attack hit effect. So we can go just below the shooting effect. We can go serialize field, private. Let's give this a name of a type of particle system and call this hit effect. And since we have two barrels, we'll want to alternate between them when firing. So let's create another shooting effect over here and make that a serialized field, private, particle system, and we'll call this alt shooting effect. While we're here, we're also going to want to ensure that we don't reference an animator for any unit who doesn't have one. So let's right click on the animator and find all references. You'll see we have quite a few references, so let's do a minor refactor so we don't repeat our code all over the place. What we can do is scroll to the bottom and let's create a new method, which is a private void, and we'll call this set animator bool. And we'll take in a string called parameter and a boolean called new state. Then let's do a find and replace by pressing Ctrl H. We're only going to want to search in this current document, and you'll see I already have it here, animator.setBool. We're going to replace with set animator bool. So we can hit replace, and you'll see it's replaced 5 occurrences, and you'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which looks right. And you'll see those now reference this method. Good. Now we can simply say if animator not equals null, then animator.setBool parameter new state. This is just going to make sure that if there is no animator attached, that we are not trying to set parameters. Okay, the only other thing we'll need to handle is the die trigger. Since that's not a boolean, we can double click on it over here, and we'll just do a null check here and say if animator not equal to null, then we can call the set trigger for die. Okay, that should do the trick. Now let's head back to Unity after saving. And let's go and set a couple of values here. So firstly, we're going to change the unit type to heavy tank. We're going to check the checkbox for does splash damage. And we're going to assign the alternate shooting effect. And of course, we still need a hit effect. So let's head over to our project tab, go back to War FX, and let's look under explosions. We're going to go with a simple explosion. Looks pretty good. And let's make that a child of heavy tank. Drop it here at the bottom. And now we can assign the explosion over here to hit effect. The other thing we'll want to ensure is that we remove the attached script which normally comes with these, which auto-destructs them. We don't want to auto-destroy these, so let's click over here and just remove those scripts. And we also don't want any of these playing on start, so we can also just uncheck this box. Let's also give our splash damage radius a higher value. Let's try something like 25 to start out. We can always adjust it as we go. Okay, before we continue, let's move some of these units out of the way. So let's take the red units, press W, and let's move them out the way. We're also going to want to move this guy out of the way. And let's make sure that this guy is on the blue team. Okay, let's go to game and let's try it out. And we can see one of these is still starting on play, so let's go and adjust that. Probably to do with these guys we don't need. And these guys, which also should not play on awake. Let's take a look. Okay, there we have our tank. As you can see, he moves at a very different speed. And if we go and attack this unit over here, there you go. Although his attacking range doesn't look right, so let's go take a look at that. Maybe it needs to be a little bigger. So let's go make it that size and let's try it again. That looks a bit better. Okay, next we're going to want to show the hit effect when he actually hits a unit. So let's go and do the code for that. We can head back to Visual Studio and we'll want to do two things here. To start out, let's go to our shooting effect, and just above there we can go here and let's go private bool and let's write should use alt effect, and we'll write that as false. And then when we go here and right click find all references, what we'll do under perform attack is simply write if should use alt effect false, and we'll write should use alt effect equals false, put that here, and over here we'll write should use alt effect true. Then we can take this and say if alt effect is null, not bool, null, then we'll just show the regular effect. Otherwise, if we should use the alt effect, then should use alt effect false, and let's say alt effect dot play. Otherwise, we'll use shooting effect dot play. So this is just going to alternate between them. Let us go and try this out before we move forward. So to do that, let's select the heavy tank and let's just reduce his attack damage. Go back to the game. Let's make sure we saved. Yeah, we did. And let's go test it out. So he uses that barrel and then uses that barrel. And great. It's alternating just fine. And we can press play to stop it. Then we'll want to show the hit effect. So here we can say if hit effect is not null, then hit effect dot transform, nope, hit effect dot transform dot position is equal to the target unit dot transform dot position, and we'll say hit effect dot play. Let's hit save and go try that out. Let's hit play. And let's go see if that works. Great. So we'll probably want to raise that a little. So there are a few ways that we could do that. But we also want to increase the size. So let's take the scale and let's press R and bring it up. a little bit bigger, which is good. Then what we can do is simply just give it a parent by saying right click, create empty parent, and let's call this hit effect, and press W, and then let's just watch the inspector over here. We can raise it up to something like 1 on the y-axis. So now, of course, when we position it, we need to ensure that we position the transform's parent and not the transform itself. So we're going to take the hit effect dot transform dot parent dot position and set that position. We can hit save, and let's go try that out. And let's see what that looks like. That's much worse. And that's obviously because we have not reset the position. So let's put this as 0 and 0, and let's try it again. Great. That's a bit better. And then let's go and set the attack damage back to be something like 100. We can go try that out. Much better. Some strange behavior in terms of the countdown. You can see what's happening is that the cooldown time is not dropping right now because he's not currently attacking. So this is something we need to correct. So you'll see it actually only starts dropping once he has a target in range. Let's watch that. And you can see it's only dropping now. So let's go correct that. Let's go back into our code. And let's look for attack cooldown time remaining, right click, find all references. And here you can see it's actually only dropping when it's in handle attack logic. So we're actually going to want this. Yeah. So let's take this over here and delete it. And we're simply going to add it under the fixed update. If the unit's alive, we're going to handle it within here, and we'll simply say before it handles any of the attack logic, let's say if attack cooldown time remaining is bigger than 0, then let's reduce it by delta time. Let's see if that works. Attack this guy, and you can see the time's dropping. We can go over here, and now it works much better. Great. Okay, next we'll want to create a prefab, so we can go to scene. Let's select our heavy tank, go to project, collapse this, units. Let's create a new folder called heavy tank. And we can just drag this right there. Then let's right click and go to create prefab variant. Let's call this red tank or red heavy tank. And let's right click again and create another variant called blue heavy tank. Then we can go to the inspector and make sure that the red heavy tank is in fact red and the blue one is blue, of course. Okay, we're also going to want to extract the materials for this model so that we can modify them. So we can go to heavy tank, we can select our model, go to inspector and extract materials. We'll keep the same folder, go to apply. And then we can select the T4B material and we can make changes to that. So what we'll do here is we'll duplicate that, and let's call this blue tank, and duplicate it again and call this red tank. Once we've duplicated these two materials, we can then go back to our prefab. So heavy tank, let's open up the blue heavy tank. We can expand this, go to the model, and we're going to want to change the material for everything except the tracks. So let's select the tracks, and we can see the first one is called P cylinder 64, and if we select the other one, that's P cylinder 74. We don't need to change that color, so let's go over here and type T for type, and let's search for mesh renderer. Probably want to spell that with an R. Then let's select all of the mesh renderers, and we'll just hold Control and click on 64, which was the one track, and 74 for the other track while holding Control. And then if we go to the inspector, we'll see that we have only one material over here. You may have to expand this accordion, and then we can take this material over here and replace it. So let's go to heavy tank, and let's take blue tank and put that here. Now we can go back to our scene. We can go back over here, cancel actually, let's close this over here, and let's select blue tank, go to inspector, and we can just go over here and put this on a bit blue. And I think that looks kind of blue. You can of course play with these colors as much as you want. That's probably a bit better, although we want them to be more blue like the other guys. So there we have a blue tank, and we can go back, hit save, back to our project tab, heavy tank, and let's do the same for the red tank. So we go heavy tank, and we go T for type, colon, mesh, renderer. We'll select all of them and hold Control, click 64, and hold Control, click 74. Go to inspector, heavy tank, take red tank and replace that. We can go back to the scene, close that, and let's go and frame the tank. Then select red tank, go to inspector, and let's adjust this to red. And I think that's okay for now. Now we can go back, hit save. Okay, let's test that out. So we can go to the project tab. Let's get a blue tank and a red tank. And let's make it a little uneven. Let's have two blue tanks. Let's run the game. And let's attack the red tank. It's a little bit janky at the moment, but now you can see that this guy's dead, but we have no way of knowing that he's dead. So we're going to want to show an explosion when he dies, and also ensure that the unit is destroyed after a few seconds. So let's stop the game. Okay, so let's give him a death effect. So we'll head back over here, and right below the hit effect, we'll create another serialized field, private, particle system, and let's say death effect. And I think we'll want another value over here. So let's go serialized field, private float, and let's say destroy after seconds. And we will say, let's say 3 to start with. Then let's hit save, and let's go over to our die method. And what we'll want to do here is to say if death effect not equals null, then death effect dot play. And we'll also want to destroy the game object after seconds. So let's hit save, minimize that. Now we can open up the heavy tank. And let's add one more effect. So we'll go to explosions, and let's take this big explosion over here, drop it as a child, press R, make it a bit bigger, make sure that it doesn't start on awake. So we'll select all of these, go to inspector and uncheck play on awake. Then we could rename this to death effect, go to heavy tank, and let's assign death effect over here. And before we move on, let's go back to the death effect and make sure that we remove this auto destruct script. We don't want that there. And we can actually unpack this prefab. And let's do the same for all the children. Okay, that's fine. I think that should be okay. Let's save that and try. So we'll select these two tanks, attack the red tank. As you'll see, he turns around and shoots back. There's a little bit of jank, but he does get destroyed, and so does the game object. Now the only problem we'll have is when we go like that, we're going to get an error. And that's because it's trying to access the dead unit from the all units list. So let's go and sort that out. We'll go back to our script. So to do that, let's head over to our game manager script and let's create a new public method and call it unit died. We'll pass in the unit and we'll say all units dot remove unit. We can hit save and let's head back to our unit script and simply call this game manager dot instance dot unit died. This. Let's hit save and try it out. So we can attack the red tank. He turns around very quickly at the moment, which we can fix, but he gets destroyed. And now we don't have an error. And we can see how the tank runs with the other units. Still looks pretty good. We can go and attack this guy over here. And it seems pretty good so far. Like I say, it's far from perfect, but we're definitely getting closer. Okay, one more thing we want to do is to add splash damage so that when it attacks, it hits units nearby. So let's go and implement that. We can head back to our script and let's move down to the perform attack method. Let's go over here and we're simply going to say if splash damage does splash damage, and then we'll say else. We're going to just let the unit take damage. So if the unit does splash damage, we'll want to make sure that any units within the radius take damage. In order to do that, we'll use the physics.overlap sphere call. I think it's best if we have a layer mask for the unit. We do have one under the game manager, I think. Layer mask, unit layer. So I think it's safe to make this public. So let's do that. We can hit save, go back over here, and let's say collider array hit colliders equals physics dot overlap sphere. We're going to set it as the target unit dot transform dot position, and the splash damage radius can be the radius, and game manager dot instance dot unit layer. Now we can do a for loop through all of the hit colliders. So let's do a simple for loop, and we'll say for int I equals 0. I is lower than hit colliders dot length and I plus plus. And then let's say if hit colliders i.tryGetComponent out unit, and let's say other unit. Then we can say other unit dot take damage, and we'll give it the same parameters. So we'll say selectable object and damage per shot. We can hit save, and let's go try it out. To test this, let's delete the red tank, and let's put a couple of red spot guys together. And let's try that out. We'll just take one of our tanks and let's attack the guy in the center. And as you can see, all three of them die. Perfect. I think that's about enough for today. Hopefully this has been useful to you. Hopefully you've gotten an idea of how we do splash damage, how to bring in a new unit, and how to customize the movement properties of each unit. And I will see you on the next episode. Thanks for watching.